The 360 shove is one of the first tricks you learn on a fingerboard, and while a 360 pop shove does the exact same rotation, getting the board in the air is significantly harder than spinning the board along the ground. That's why at the Battle of the Barracks they always say,
"No doing tricks that slide on the ground if your opponent popped his trick."
And we can thank Joey Brzezinski from the very first Battle of the Barracks for that rule.
You're going down, son. No?
To clear up any confusion, a 360 pop shove is when the board does a 360 rotation away from you. The naming can be a bit confusing, but a 360 shove and a 360 shove it are the exact same thing. And a 360 pop shove or a 360 pop shove it is a 360 shove where you pop your tail on the ground, which causes it to get into the air. But before we learn to get our board in the air, let's start with the basics. Step number 1, how to 360 shove. First, you want to place your index finger in the middle of the board and your middle finger on the tail of the board. Some people find it easier to have their middle finger in the middle of the tail, but personally, I find it's a lot easier to have your middle finger on the edge of the tail that's furthest away from you. Next, you want to use your middle finger to pull the tail of the board towards you, which will cause the board to rotate away from you. A good trick to practice with 360 shoves is to try to keep your index finger on the board the entire time. The key here is to not put too much pressure on your index finger so that the board can still rotate, and lifting up your index finger just enough so that the board stays under your fingers the entire time. And while your index finger doesn't really do anything when it comes to doing a simple 360 shove, learning to keep it on the board as the board spins is really going to help with doing a proper 360 pop shove and keep it flat in the air so that the board doesn't flip over. Once you pull back towards you on the tail and you can get it to spin, all you need to do is put your fingers back on the board and roll away. Step number 2, popping the board. Doing a 360 pop shove is very similar to doing a pop shove, so if you haven't already, I recommend you check out my pop shove tutorial so you can really master the pop shove first. But even if you can't pop shove, I'm going to cover everything you need to know in this video to do a 360 pop shove. The key to this trick is to not think so much about scooping the tail against the ground to get it to spin, and to instead focus on popping the tail against the ground to get it into the air. I like to think of it as if I'm doing a simple ollie but pulling my index finger towards me as I pop, rather than scraping the tail against the ground to get it to start spinning. Another trick that can help with the pop is to have your middle finger hanging slightly over the edge that's furthest away from you. This will naturally make the board want to spin away from you more so that you can make sure that you're getting a really solid pop of the tail against the ground. The finger positioning is also super important for this trick because having our middle finger on the edge of the board that's furthest away from us is going to make the board want to flip like a heel flip when we pop, and having our index finger in the middle of the board is going to want to make the board flip like a kick flip, so the two of these will cancel each other out, keeping the board flat in the air, which is really going to help us for the next part of this trick. Step number 3, leveling out the board in the air. With a 360 shove that rotates along the ground, you don't really need to use your index finger because your wheels are on the ground, which help the board stay flat and prevent it from flipping over. But with a 360 pop shove, the board naturally wants to flip over, so we need to use our index finger to prevent that from happening. The most common problem people run into when doing this trick is accidentally doing a tray flip. Even moving your index finger off the board for a fraction of a second can be enough time to cause it to flip. So you want to try to keep your index finger on the board the entire time and follow the board with your hand as it pops in the air. This is definitely the hardest part about this trick. I've seen some tutorials that say you want to apply pressure onto your index finger, but whenever I try that, I always end up doing a tray flip. I like to think of it more as you're popping the board into your index finger and then using your hand to follow the board in the air so that your index finger never leaves the grip tape. I don't really put any pressure on my index finger, and I just focus on keeping it on the grip tape so that the board doesn't flip. Another tip that can really help is to think about pointing your index finger down at the ground as the board spins. This is going to help the board wrap around your finger, and it will make it a bit easier to keep your finger on the grip tape the entire time. Step number 4, consistency. 360 shoves are one of those tricks that like to go all over the place. It took me a long time to be able to land them every try, so here's a few helpful tricks that I learned to pop them higher and land them more consistently. If you're finding that your 360 pop shoves are over rotating and spinning more like a 540 shove, try turning your fingers away from you. This is going to slow down the spin a lot and give you a lot more control over the board. When you have your fingers straight on the board or turned towards you, the board naturally wants to spin more and it tends to not stay directly under your fingers. If your 360 pop shoves keep flipping over like a tray flip, try not to overcomplicate things and focus on doing a simple ollie, but have your fingers in the 360 pop shove position. That way you're not going to accidentally flick the board with your index finger, and it will help keep the board flat in the air. Focusing on doing just an ollie can also help if you're still over rotating the board. That way we're not forcing it to spin, and the way our fingers are positioned will naturally want to make the board spin away from you. Another tip is to keep your index finger directly in the center of the board. If you have your index finger too close towards you, the board will want to flip over. By placing our index finger directly in the center of the board, it makes it a lot harder for the board to flip, and it will help keep the board flat in the air. You really want to try to get the board to wrap around your finger as it rotates in the air. When you're doing a tray flip, your index finger leaves the board for a split second, which causes it to flip. So focus on keeping your index finger on the grip tape the entire time so you can really feel the board wrap around your finger. 360 pop shoves really show off your skill and control on a fingerboard. A lot of people skip learning them properly because doing a tray flip is significantly easier. But for me personally, 360 pop shoves are one of my favorite tricks. And if you want to learn some other easy tricks, check out my previous videos to learn about ollies or basic manuals and grinds. Once you combine those with your 360 pop shoves, you'll be looking like a pro fingerboarder in no time. And let me know in the comments below what trick you want to learn next. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe for more tutorials like this.